Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this series. This series is sort of meant to be sort of like a handbook of narcissistic relationship terminology. And this series is being put out there to sort of help you get more familiar with terms you may not know and also learn about patterns and techniques that may be helpful for you in managing your narcissistic relationship. Today, we're going to take on the term narcissistic supply, a term I know many of you know. But before I do that, please just hit the bell and subscribe to this channel. You'll not only get daily updates about this series coming out, but also about all of the other content we have on this channel. So let's go ahead and start and talk about this idea of narcissistic supply. So imagine you were relying on a tank on your back for air, like a scuba diver would. And then someone kinked your hose or turned off your air tank. What would you do? I mean, the answer is pretty obvious. You would most likely, most of us, would panic. You'd be desperately gasping, doing anything you could to get that air turned on or get the air unkinked so it's coming back to you. You'd become agitated. You would do anything you could so you could get your air supply. And once you did get that air supply and you breathed it in, you'd be fine. You might be aggravated, but you'd be fine. And that, in a sense, is how a narcissist feels. That's how they feel when they can't get validation, they can't get admiration, they can't get recognition or attention. They psychologically feel as though they are gasping for air. In a way, you might even feel a little bad for someone if they were in that situation. If you were thinking, is that really how they feel? Like they can't breathe if they can't get air? Do they really get that panicky if they can't get their validation and admiration? If they can't get their supply? Yeah, that's how they feel. So it sort of starts making sense. Because narcissistic supply is, in fact, the validation, the acknowledgement, the admiration, the recognition, the gratification, the reward, or whatever else it is that narcissists get from other people or from other sources, such as social media. And this can include a whole variety of things. This can include things like getting compliments, getting awards, getting applause, or just simply giving them the opportunity to sit there and talk, and hold court. Narcissistic supply, it's a cynical term. It's basically reducing or labeling all of the social interactions of the narcissist as serving the largely singular purpose of only doing one thing, and that's to validate the narcissist. So in this way, interactions with a narcissist don't tend to be reciprocal or sort of what we call two-way conversations or interactions. Rather, they are often you feeling as though you are serving a function for the narcissist in the conversation. Maybe you're giving them information. Maybe you're giving them attention. Or maybe you're keeping them from having to be alone. Or maybe you're doing things like having sex with them or making them look good. And you might make someone else look good through your appearance, your accomplishments, your wealth, whatever it is. It's not a two-way street. It's a very, very one-way street in any form of a relationship with a narcissistic individual. You're the one delivering supply to them. And yeah, so it is a cynical term, but it also sort of rather realistically lays out the dynamic of a narcissistic relationship. Now, it can take a while for a person to figure out that they are merely a source of supply and validation for a person who's narcissistic. Because narcissistic individuals are so good at something called mirroring, something else I'll be getting at in this series, it actually seems that the relationship might even feel like a two-way street, even when it's not. In fact, you could argue that during the love bombing phase, when the narcissist is in some ways lavishing you with attention. It can feel as though you're being seen and heard in a way that you have never been seen or heard before. Some people report that it's one of the most seductive, enveloping feelings that they've ever had in their lives. But that's not what's happening. And before long, you will see patterns such as the narcissist not really paying attention to you. However, they will require you to give them absolute awareness, absolute attention. And, listen, as is going to happen in any relationship over time, at some point we get into a rhythm with a person, right? We're not completely intensely focused on them at all times. Life happens. There's garbage to take out, there's taxes to do, there's stuff to do. And we assume that another adult in a relationship with us is not an infant who needs our attention 24/7. The problem is that doesn't really work for the narcissist, who needs a pretty steady supply of adoration and attention. Now, a narcissistic supply is a feature of all narcissistic relationships because, as I said at the beginning of the video, it's the air that they breathe. In a romantic relationship or in an intimate relationship, after that sort of initial period of love bombing passes, you start to recognize that if you aren't giving them the supply they want, the way they want it, when they want it, then your relationship is going to start to feel a little bit more uncomfortable. They're going to expect you to be their cheerleader, to be their publicist, and to worship them blindly. And what's interesting is that a common dynamic that can often happen in narcissistic relationships is the day that comes around when the first time that happens, that you say something that the narcissist would perceive as critical. And you assume that maybe you misspoke, maybe they misheard it, whatever it is, that you could discuss this so-called criticism like two normal adults would. But then you find that nothing you say, nothing can diminish their narcissistic rage. Over time, you very clearly recognize that the narcissist is only interested in you when you are delivering them supply the way they want it. And supply is all those things. It's social interaction, it's validation, and it's admiration that fits the mold of exactly what the narcissist wants. And sometimes you may even feel like you are delivering validation and approval, but it turns out you weren't admiring the right thing, the thing that they wanted you to admire them that day, that time. You may thank them for bringing home dinner, but they actually wanted you to compliment them on this new shirt or the deal they made at work. And in this way, not only do you have to deliver narcissistic supply, but you also need to be a mind reader. Good luck with that, because if you can do that, you'll make a whole heck of a lot more money than I ever could. So in family relationships, the dynamic of narcissistic supply is also incredibly clear. And anyone who's been from such a family knows this well. Any kind of conversation with your narcissistic parents or other narcissistic family members really won't move forward unless it's all about your parent and you engaging in lots of gratitude and thank you so much and lots of compliments and whatever else it may be that family member expects you to say. And if you deviate from that script of what that narcissistic parent wants to hear from you, needs to hear from you, then you may pay dearly through reactions like their rage or their withdrawal or even their discarding of you. And it is sad and it's hard because when it is your parent, it can really be quite unsettling, taking you back to that time in childhood when you figured out that the only way to survive in your narcissistic family dynamic was either to be a provider of narcissistic supply to that parent and enable them, or to rebel and lose the love and the regard of your parent. And neither of those paths is easy. It can really be painful as an adult and still feel as though your only function in your parental relationship, just as when you were a child, is simply to just keep validating your parents. These are the parents, narcissistic parents are the ones who actually expect you, even as an adult sometimes, for you to thank them for feeding and clothing you as a child. You owe me a lot. You owe me a lot of gratitude. You're like, I didn't sign up for this. Now, narcissistic supply is also a big issue in workplaces in which, let's face it, people feel like they have to kiss the butt of the manager or the boss or whomever is in leadership, whatever position that narcissist holds, who really expect people to kiss the ring of the narcissist. Now, you learn that the people in your workplace who are the ones who are good at delivering the narcissistic supply to the narcissist, those are the ones who often succeed in that system. And we have all kinds of colorful terms for these people. But these workplace relationships don't foster collaboration or healthy conversation at all. These are very toxic and one-sided relationships. It's not mentorship. It's you basically fluffing someone all the time. Now, narcissistic supply isn't just about what you say. It can also be about other things too. For example, the way you look. A partner may value you only because you are very attractive and you make him or you make her look good to other people, because people say, oh my goodness, you have such a beautiful or handsome partner. So in that way, it can become very clear to you over time that if you gain weight or you get old, it's not going to happen, or you don't wear certain kinds of clothes, then you are no longer a useful source of supply. And you're likely going to be discarded or criticized and devalued. So you'll see this pattern that people who are in certain kinds of narcissistic relationships, particularly ones that are very superficially focused, can feel like they are robots or that they're dolls who are only valued for how they look and for what they say. Now, interestingly, it's not just people that can be a source of narcissistic supply. Things, objects can be a source of supply too. And these are objects that will communicate something about the narcissist to the rest of the world. Now, because narcissists are so superficial by definition, they're going to rely on things such as, expensive cars or other kinds of expensive luxury items, such as very, very expensive watches or handbags or shoes or designer labels or really over-the-top houses in the right neighborhoods with pools, that's infinity pools, and kitchens you can park a bus in, and toys such as boats and planes, or experiences such as very exotic vacations to those places that are hard to access. These are things like the people who might spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do something like climb Mount Everest so they can talk about it ceaselessly for years, or take all kinds of other kinds of luxury experiences so that they can talk about them. They may buy incredibly hard to access pieces of art to just hang up in their homes and brag about owning. And these things and experiences become their narcissistic supply. The narcissistic person feels validated by owning these things. And interestingly, it often only leaves them content for a minute, because inevitably someone else is going to have a better experience or a better house or a better car or a better watch or a better thing. And then, because envy is such a key experience in narcissism, their envy can lead them to become quite grouchy and irritable. Now, social media is the mothership of narcissistic supply. I've been doing this work for a long time. I've actually been doing this work even before there was such a thing as social media. So when social media first arose, it was about 15 plus years ago, I remember that one of the first things I thought was, Oh my gosh, this cannot be happening, because back in the day, narcissists actually had to leave the house to get validation. Now, they were going to be able to mainline validation and approval from the comfort of their own homes without even getting out of bed. Like once upon a time, you really kind of had to get yourself together, and they had to reach out to people in a more significant manner to get their validation. There was definitely more work involved. Now, with social media, people can seek out validation in all of its forms, 24 hours a day, just by not even leaving the house. Though they certainly do leave their house, and they document every single laborious moment. Now, the ways in which social media provide narcissistic supply, they're pretty obvious. You know, what happens is social media has turned narcissistic supply, which was something sort of vague, into a straight numbers game. It used to be compliments and all that. Now it's numbers. It's number of followers, it's number of likes, it's number of comments. And social media took narcissistic supply and it made it quantifiable, something we could count, like money. And the game was on. Most of us are really not wired to keep putting ourselves out there saying, look at me, tell me I'm great, tell me I'm attractive, please admire me. But as anyone who has ever looked at their social media feed knows, there are a lot of people out there who require a lot of attention, admiration, and validation. So in other words, it's a lot of people out there who need supply. And there's some interesting research out there that shows people who score higher on narcissism actually will report more negative mood states when they don't get enough likes or whatever it is on social media. Now, I'm going to step back for a moment, though, before I throw social media down, down for the count. Just because you feel good, maybe you post a picture of a beautiful sunset on a vacation, or your cute niece, or you might look really pretty dressed up on a big night out, or you post a really pithy quote that gets lots of likes. Just because you enjoy that doesn't make you a narcissist. All of us feel good when we get attention, and we like it when people tell us we're clever, or we're cool, or we're attractive. Here's the question. It comes down to whether you need it, not like it, need it. Do you find yourself feeling genuinely sad, or even worse than sad, if you don't get that validation? And do you find yourself getting distracted because you're so uncomfortable because you're not being validated? That's only under those conditions are we veering into more problematic territory. If that need for social media validation is also coupled with other things, like not caring about other people, or feeling entitled to special treatment, or being arrogant, or only caring about superficial things, then that's when we are much more likely to be seeing a narcissistic pattern, and not just that momentary joy of somebody liking our picture. We have to be clear that it's all about need. If a person needs narcissistic supply, healthy people know that they're good with or without the likes. They post the picture, and even if nobody likes it, or one or two people do, they don't care. They just wanted to share it with the world. Now remember too that narcissistic supply isn't just the validation and admiration piece, though that's a lot of it. It's also other things people offer, like conflicts and arguments. Narcissists will often bait other people. And there's an episode on this series, in this series about baiting. Narcissists love conflict, and they love arguing because it allows them to keep feeling like a victim. And it also allows them to bully and share their anger and put their disappointment and stress on other people. They can sit there and provide them a context against which to do that. And that is also a form of narcissistic supply, baiting people to create conflict. And when you deliver that conflict to them, you're delivering supply to them. So that, again, always takes us to that same question. Why do narcissists need narcissistic supply? Because it helps them. It helps them protect that internal core sense of insecurity. Now remember, narcissists cannot regulate their sense of self or even their emotional states internally. They need other people to prop them up. And in that way, narcissistic supply almost serves as like a scaffold to keep up, to prop them up. And narcissists really are not capable of deep, consistent, and real intimacy. Their relationships tend to be rather transactional. If you give me supply, I'll hang out with you. And because so many of us, too many of us, devalue ourselves, we fall into this trap of trading on narcissistic supply. Instead of saying like, this relationship's sort of one-sided and I just don't want to be a bringer of supply, instead of saying that and saying, I don't want to do this anymore, the narcissistic supply becomes a way for the narcissist to maintain their sense of self. And it becomes a bit of an existential issue too. As long as they're getting validation, they exist. As long as you're sitting there and enabling them, as long as the likes are coming in on Instagram, as long as they're, invited to the parties, then they exist. I mean, for a narcissist, instead of I think, therefore I am, it becomes I'm validated, therefore I am. And so, again, the sad thing is we fall for it. That transactional piece, we fall for it. Now, early on, the love bombing can confuse you. And then once it becomes a sort of one-way highway where your truck only goes one direction to deliver narcissistic supply to them, you may not know and be aware of exactly what's happening. So you do early on. You try to get them to listen to you, and they don't. And they don't really seem that interested in you. In family relationships, this may be how it has always been in the relationship. And the family system may actually act to enable the massive delivery of narcissistic supply to whomever the narcissist may be in your family. In workplaces, things like manipulation and bullying may be what propelled your boss's career forward to be the boss. And from a standpoint of survival, people may keep giving narcissistic supply to the boss or the leader and keep enabling that dynamic of delivering narcissistic supply because nobody wants to be the one to tell the emperor or the empress that he or she is not wearing any clothes. Now, in the workplace, and I once did a video on narcissistic fluffing, which you can go back and watch, but in the workplace, you can actually work this to your advantage. It's a little bit manipulative, but if you're in a workplace situation that you can't leave anytime soon, or you just need to keep it afloat, you need to keep your job afloat for a little longer, then by delivering a little bit of excessive narcissistic supply, you may be able to get your boss or your manager or your colleague off your back for the short term at least, toss them a bunch of compliments, tell them they're doing a great job, tell them how they inspire you, and you might buy a little time. Narcissistic supply definitely makes a relationship seem like work. And because you never know how much supply is enough supply, it can be exhausting and it can be confusing. You've got to pay attention to the rhythms of your relationship. If it feels one-sided and you feel like in order to keep the trains running on time in your relationship, you've always got to be validating, then there's your answer. Once you see it for what it is, you're going to be able to make an informed decision about how you want to move forward in this relationship. But keep this in mind. You do need to learn to value yourself. It is our tendency to devalue ourselves that sometimes can make the dynamic of narcissistic supply get stuck. Because what can happen then is that we actually believe that, Well, at least now I know what I'm doing to keep this person around, because we don't realize we're good. Like, having a relationship with us is good. And if it doesn't work for the other person, that's okay. Not everything works. But by making it about supply, a lot of people may feel in control of that dynamic. If I keep validating this person, then it's all going to be fine. And if you grew up that way, you can be vulnerable to it. But you have to ask yourself, do you really want to spend your life, your relationships, being basically the equivalent of a person who's driving cargo trucks in one direction and dropping lots of narcissistic supply at the foot of your narcissist, but not taking anything back for yourself? I hope that clarifies the concept of narcissistic supply for you and allows you to take a much more clear look at it. This entire series is designed to provide clarification on terms like narcissistic supply. Please, if you like this and you want to hear more of this series, hit the bell, subscribe to this channel. You'll get notifications not only about this series, but also about all of the content we put out on a whole range of topics related to narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and mental health. Thanks again. Thanks again. Thanks again. Thanks.